Welcome back to Dove Tech Talks. I'm your host, Eddie Horton. Today we're going to show you how to do something with some tools. Get my safety glasses on. Don't get hurt. See? Can't poke me now. All right, so today the customer came in. Chief complaint was the rear brakes on the right rear of the vehicle were hot. Now we've already taken those apart. We found out that it had a bad caliper, and when we have a bad caliper and it heats up as bad as this one did, we always replace the line going to the caliper from the steel line on the axle. It's always a good idea to do that. That line can separate, and that could be where you're having your problems. It could be that the inside of that line has separated and it creates a little bubble inside there, and you can push fluid past the bubble with the brake pedal, but when you let up on the brake pedal, the fluid will not recede, and then it seems like the brake's still on for that corner of the vehicle, causing it to get very, very hot. And if you're in town driving, it just gets hotter and hotter and hotter and hotter. So unfortunately, they don't sell. We can buy just one rotor and one caliper if your customer just doesn't have the money to do the whole system in the rear. But what you can't do is you can't buy just 2 brake pads. And you never want to use old brake pads. They have been superheated and crystallized and hardened, and they're always either going to sing to you and make noise, or they could just fail you completely and not work as efficiently as they should on that side. So we always replace those. We always replace the rotor on that side because you don't know how hot it got. And it's not from due to warpage, like I said, but it could be harder than it's supposed to be. It could be, it could have changed the molecular structure of it. I don't know, but we don't want to use it again. I know that. It's very unsafe to use it again after something like this has occurred. So we tore down that side already. Unfortunately, we didn't have very good lighting on that side, so we're going to tear down this side and show you some of the stuff that we did, little shortcuts that we do. I got a ratcheting wrench, 12 millimeter now. We're going to put on the back of this thing, and we're going to take this caliper off this vehicle. So take these loose here. And then once we get them loose, leave them on there. You leave them, just get them loose where, you know, they're moving around and stuff. Now, we're gonna have to push these pistons back in. But to get it off, we're gonna push them in with the screwdriver. We just take the little edge right here and pry up on it like that. And then down here, the same thing, just pry out a little bit. And that pushes that piston back in enough to where you got some play now. And now you take your bolts all the way off. One down here. See, we got a little pink, that's the Loctite kind of stuff they use on anti-vibration stuff so it don't come out. That's the one on the bottom. They're not very large. This one's still kind of tight up here. Got some of that pink stuff on there I showed you. Now sometimes there is a slide that goes into this holder, and sometimes now after you've pried that loose, you can see how that comes off real easy. It just pops right off there. Now you don't want to leave these hanging, so I always just kind of tuck them in here. They got fancy holders for that and everything. We're going to come back to that. Now we're going to pull our pads out. So just take your screwdriver, stick it in between there, pry them out a little bit, and then they'll just pop off there. Try not to let it hit your toes, because that would hurt. See, this side's not too bad. They're in pretty good shape, but unfortunately we have to replace them. And since the customer's got to buy them for the other side, you don't want to shortchange them and not get them. But see, these look pretty good. Now, one thing that you're looking for when you're taking a brake pad off is the distance from here to here should be the same on both sides. If it's not, it's because these slides in here are not moving on one end or the other. You want to make sure those slides are moving. If they're not, you need to peg them out of there, pull them out, clean them, lube them, and then put them back together again. If those slides don't move, it'll also cause the rear pad to wear prematurely. So always make sure that those things are moving and sliding like they're supposed to. Now we got to take off the, well, No, on this side we don't. We're gonna leave this on here on this side. We're not changing anything except for the pads over here. So we'll pop these off because we will get new hardware. You always want to buy the pads that come with the new hardware. They're cheaper if you don't, but if you don't, I'll show you why. See how nasty this gets in here? See this black stuff? It's brake dust. And if it builds up, then the pad can't slide like it's supposed to. So when you put your new pads on there, always get them that's got the new brake hardware in them. You always want to do that. Don't cheap out, because if you cheap out, you will be doing your brake pads sooner than you're supposed to. Pop these off. Now we can wait for our parts to get here for our new stuff. Reverse the procedure of putting them back on. It's pretty simple, pretty cut and dry. The only thing that we got left to do on this is take one of the old brake pads, stick it in here like this, and we're going to push these pistons back in. So let me go get that tool. I'll be right back. I almost forgot. I'm not going to cheat you guys. Okay, so I got my little handy dandy tool here. Now there's a bunch of tools, there's a bunch of different ways to do this. There's really no wrong way to do it. You just don't want to do this against these pistons because sometimes they are like a plastic type material. I know it's, they're not all aluminum. I know it's called Phenonic or some crazy name like that. I called them in the day Bakelite. They were Bakelite pistons back a long time ago. So you run these back. Now, like I said, there's a bunch of different tools to do this with. They got a real fancy one that ratchets as you turn it. It ratchets opposite directions. It's really kind of cool. I just haven't bought one yet. There's no reason for me to buy one because I have this. And, you know, if you got a tool that you're using and it works, why spend more money on a tool that you don't have to have? So put this in there, tighten these up, back up. Tighten this one back up against the other piston. This is a dual piston, so you have two of them to contend with. It'll tighten this flange up against the caliper, the outside of the caliper, and then this inside area has the brake pad against it with these two here. And then we will turn this, and we just do a couple of turns on each one. You don't want to go and do one side all the way down. You will mess it up and possibly break something. You could cause a piston to be sideways in there. And as you're turning these back in there, you want to make sure that they turn easy. They shouldn't be turning hard. As it bottoms out and go to your last one, that's about a turn and a half on each one. I mean, a turn and a half difference on each one, which is really good. Leave it there for a second so the fluid recedes all back where it's supposed to go. Now, some people say that you should open the bleeder and get all the old fluid out and everything. You can do that. It's not a problem. This brake job was done recently. So we didn't have to do it on this one because it was a recent brake job that we had already done. And the problem it had was it came back with a caliper that was bad a year later. So we didn't have to do that, bleed the whole fluid thing, get all the old fluid out and new fluid in. We did that last time. So this was the only thing we had left to do on this. Like I said, you're just going to put your new shims in here and we're going to reverse the procedure, what we did putting it together. That's just about it. This is the first video I've done where I've told people how to do something that I do all the time. So I hope you enjoyed it. If you like it, give it a thumbs up. Tell me, you know, if I missed something or you don't like the way I did something, tell me at the bottom in the comments. And hey, we'll change it. You know, if it's something I did wrong, we will absolutely change it. We like to think that we get it right the best that we can most of the time. Don't forget about Mike Weller over at AP Cigar. Numbers at the bottom of the screen. Sorry, guys. And don't forget about Mr. Dempsey up there in Ohio at MrTaillight.com and Patriot Beard Supply. Always taking care of that great-looking beard. See how I look? I look nice, don't I? You can't have me. I'm married. And if you're a man, you damn sure can't have me. I'm out.